Chapter 20. It was haymaking again, and Merlin had been with them a year. The wind had been, and the snow, and the rain, and the sun once more. The boys looked longer in the leg, but otherwise everything was the same. 6 other years passed by. Sometimes Sir Grummore came on a visit. Sometimes King Pellinore could be descried galloping over the Purlius after the beast, or with the beast after him, if they happened to have got muddled up. Coley lost the vertical stripes of his first year's plumage and became grayer, grimmer, madder, and distinguished by smart horizontal bars where the long stripes had been. The Merlins were released every winter, and new ones caught again next year. Hobbs' hair went white. The sergeant at arms developed a pot-belly and nearly died of shame, but continued to cry out 1, 2 in a huskier voice upon every possible occasion. Nobody else seemed to change at all, except the boys. They grew longer. They ran like wild colts, as before, and visited Robin when they had a mind to, and had innumerable adventures too lengthy to be recorded. Merlin's extra tuition went on just the same, for in those days even the grown-ups were so childish that they saw nothing uninteresting in being turned into snakes or owls, or in going invisibility to visit giants. The only difference was that now, in their fencing lessons, Kay and Wart were an easy match for the pot-bellied sergeant, and paid him back accidentally for many of the buffets which he had once given them. They had more and more proper weapons given to them when they had reached their teens, until in the end they had full suits of armor and bows nearly 6 feet long, which would fire the real cloth-yard shaft. You were not supposed to use a bow longer than your own height, for it was considered that by doing so you were expending unnecessary energy, rather like using an elephant gun to shoot an Ovis Aemon with. At any rate, modest men were careful not to overbow themselves. It was a form of boasting. As the years went by, Kay became more difficult. He always used a bow too big for him, and did not shoot very accurately with it either. He lost his temper and challenged nearly everybody to have a fight. And in those few cases where he did actually have to fight, he was invariably beaten. Also, he became sarcastic, made the sergeant miserable by nagging about his stomach, and went on at the wart about his father and mother when Sir Ector was not about. He did not seem to want to do this. It was as if he disliked it, but could not help it. The wart continued to be stupid, fond of Kay, and interested in birds. Merlin looked younger every year, which was only natural because he was younger. Archimedes got married and brought up several handsome families of quilly youngsters in the tower room. Sir Ector got sciatica. 3 trees were struck by lightning. Master Twitty came every Christmas without altering a hair. Goat lost all his teeth and could eat nothing but slops, but miraculously lived on. Master Passaloo remembered a new verse about King Cole. The years passed regularly, and the old English snow lay as it was expected to lie, sometimes with a robin redbreast in one corner of the picture, a church bell or lighted window in the other. And in the end, it was nearly time for Kay's initiation as a full-blown knight. Proportionately, as the day became nearer, the two boys drifted apart, for Kay did not care to associate with the wart any longer on the same terms, because he would need to be more dignified as a knight, and could not afford to have his squire on intimate terms with him. The wart, who would have to be the squire, followed him about disconsolately, as long as he was allowed to do so, and then went off full miserably to amuse himself alone as best he might. He went to the kitchen. Well, I am a Cinderella now, he said to himself. Even if I had the best of it for some mysterious reason, up to the present time in our education, now I must pay for my past pleasures and for seeing all those delightful dragons, witches, unicorns, camel-leopards, and such like, by being a mere second-rate squire and holding case extra spears for him while he hovers by some well or other and jousts with all comers. Never mind, I have a good time while it lasted, and it is not such bad fun being a Cinderella when you can do it in a kitchen which has a fireplace big enough to roast an ox. And the wart looked round the busy kitchen, which was colored by the flames till it looked much like hell, with sorrowful affection. The education of any civilized gentleman in those days used to go through 3 stages: page, squire, knight, and at any rate the wart had been through the first 2 of these. It was rather like being the son of a modern gentleman who has made his money out of trade, for your father started you on the bottom rung even then, in your education of manners. As a page, Wart had learned to lay the tables with 3 cloths and a carpet, and to bring meat from the kitchen, and to serve Sir Ector or his guests on bended knee, with 1 clean towel over his shoulder, 1 for each visitor, and 1 to wipe out the basins. He had been taught all the noble arts of servility, and from the earliest time that he could remember, there had lain pleasantly in the end of his nose the various scents of mint, used to freshen the waters in the ewers, or of basil, chamomile, fennel, hyssop, and lavender, which he had been taught to strew upon the rushy floors, or of the angelica, saffron, aniseed, and tarragon, which were used to spice the savories which he had to carry. So he was accustomed to the kitchen, quite apart from the fact that everybody who lived in the castle was a friend of his, who might be visited on any occasion. Wart sat in the enormous firelights and looked about him with pleasure. He looked upon the long spits which he had often turned when he was smaller, sitting behind an old straw target soaked in water so that he might not be roasted himself, and upon the ladles and spoons whose handles could be measured in yards, with which he had been accustomed to baste the meat. He watched with water in his mouth the arrangements for the evening meal: a boar's head with a lemon in its jaws, and split almond whiskers, which would be served with a fanfare of trumpets, a kind of pork pie with sour apple juice, peppered custard, and several birds' legs or spiced leaves sticking out of the top to show what was in it, and a most luscious-looking frumentary. He said to himself with a sigh, "It is not so bad being a servant after all." "Still sighing?" asked Merlin, who had turned up from somewhere, "like you were that day we went to watch King Pelinor's joust?" "Oh, no," said the wart, "or rather, oh, yes, and for the same reason, but I don't really mind. I'm sure I shall make a better squire than old Kay would. Look at the saffron going into that frumenty. It just matches the firelight on the hams in the chimney." "It is lovely," said Merlin. "Only fools want to be great." "Kay won't tell me," said the wart, "what happens when you are made a knight. He says it is too sacred. What does happen?" "Oh, just a lot of fuss. You will have to undress him and put him into a bath hung with rich hangings, and then 2 experienced knights will turn up. Probably Sir Ector will get hold of old Grummore and King Pellinore, and they will both sit on the edge of the bath and give him a long lecture about the ideals of chivalry. When they have done, they will pour some of the bath water over him and sign him with the cross, and then you will have to conduct him into a clean bed to get dry.
Then you dress him up as a hermit and take him off to the chapel, and there he stays awake all night, watching his armor and saying prayers. People say it's lonely and terrible for him in this vigil, but it isn't at all really, because the vicar and the man who sees to the candles and an armed guard, and probably you as well as his esquire, will have to sit up with him at the same time. In the morning you will lead him off to bed to have a good sleep as soon as he has confessed and heard mass and offered a candle with a piece of money stuck into it as near the lighted end as possible. And then, when all are rested, you dress him up again in his very best clothes for dinner. Before dinner you lead him into the hall with his spurs and sword all ready, and King Pellinore puts on the first spur, and Sir Grummore puts on the second, and then Sir Ector girds on the sword and kisses him and smacks him on the shoulder and says, "Be thou a good knight."
Is that all?
No, you go to the chapel again, and Kay offers his sword to the vicar, and the vicar gives it back to him, and after that our good cook over there meets him at the door and claims his spurs as a reward, and says, "I shall keep these spurs for you, and if at any time you don't behave like a true knight should do, why, I shall put them in the soup."
That is the end?
Yes, except for the dinner.
If I were made a knight, said the ward, staring dreamily into the fire, I should insist upon my doing my vigil all by myself, as Hob does with his hawks, and I should pray to God to let me encounter all the evil in the world in my own person, so that if I conquered, there should be none left, while if I were defeated, it would be I who would suffer for it.
That would be extremely presumptuous of you, said Merlin, and you would be conquered, and you would suffer for it.
I shouldn't mind.
Wouldn't you? Wait till it happens and see.
Why do people not think, when they are grown up, as I do when I am young?
Oh dear, said Merlin, you are making me feel confused. Suppose you wait till you are grown up and know the reason.
I don't think that is an answer at all, replied the ward, pretty justly. Merlin wrung his hands.
Well, anyway, he said, suppose they didn't let you stand against all the evil in the world.
I could ask, said the ward.
You could ask,
repeated Merlin. He thrust the end of his beard into his mouth, stared tragically in the fire, and began to munch it fiercely. 21. The day for the great ceremony drew near. The invitations to King Pellinore and Sir Grummore were sent out, and the wart withdrew himself more and more into the kitchen.
Come on, Wart, old boy, said Sir Ector ruefully. I didn't think you would take it so bad. It doesn't become you to do this sulking.
I'm not sulking, said the ward. I don't mind a bit, and I'm very glad that Kay is going to be a knight. Please don't think I am sulking.
You are a good boy, said Sir Ector. I know you're not sulking, really, but do cheer up. Kay isn't such a bad stick, you know, in his way.
Kay is a splendid chap, said the ward. Only I was not happy because he did not seem to want to go hawking or anything with me any more.
It's his youthfulness, said Sir Ector. It will all clear up.
I'm sure it will, said the ward. It is only that he doesn't want me to go with him, just at the moment, and so, of course, I don't go. But I will go, added the ward, as soon as he commands me. I will do exactly what he says. Honestly, I think Kay is a good person, and I'm not sulking a bit.
You have a glass of this canary,
said Sir Ector.
and go and see if old Merlin can't start cheering you up.
Sir Ector has given me a glass of canary, said the ward, and sent me to see you if you can't cheer me up.
Sir Ector, said Merlin, is a wise man.
Well, said the ward, what about it?
The best thing for disturbances of the spirit,
replied Merlin, beginning to puff and blow,
is to learn. That is the only thing that never fails. You may grow old and trembling with your anatomies. You may lie awake at night listening to the disorder of your veins. And you may miss your only love and lose your moneys to a monster. You may see the world about you devastated by evil lunatics, or know your honor trampled in the sewers of baser minds. There is only one thing for it, then, to learn. Learn why the world wags and what wags it. That is the only thing which the poor mind can never exhaust, never alienate, never be tortured by, never fear or distrust, and never dream of regretting. Learning is the thing for you. Look at what a lot of things there are to learn. Pure science, the only purity there is. You can learn astronomy in a lifetime, natural history in 3, literature in 6, and then, after you have exhausted 1,000,000 lifetimes in biology and medicine, and theocriticism, and geography, and histories, and economics, why, you can start to make a cartwheel out of the appropriate wood, or spend 50 years learning to begin to learn to beat your adversary at fencing. After that, you can start again on mathematics until it is time to learn to plow.
Apart from all these things, said the ward, what do you suggest for me to do just now?
Let me see, said the magician, considering. We have had a short 6 years of this, and in that time I think I am right in saying that you have been something in either animal, vegetable, or mineral, something in earth, air, fire, or water.
I don't know much, said the ward, about the animals and the earth.
Then the best thing is that you shall meet my friend, the badger.
I have never met a badger.
Good, said Merlin. Except for dear old Archimedes, I think he is the most learned creature that I know. You will like him. By the way, Walt, added the magician, stopping in the middle of his spell, there's one thing I ought to tell you. This is the last time I shall be able to turn you into anything. All the magic for that kind of thing has been used up, and this will be the end of your education. When Kay has been knighted, my labors will be over. You will have to go away then to be his squire in the wide world, and I shall go elsewhere. Do you think you have learned anything?
I have learned and been happy.
That's all right then, said Merlin. Try to remember what you learned.
He proceeded with the spell, pointed his wand of lignum vitae at the little bear, which had just begun to glow in the dimity of it as it hung by its tail from the North Star, and called out cheerfully,
Have a good time for the last night. Give love to Badger.
The call sounded from far away, and Wart found himself standing at the edge of a fallen bank in the forest sauvage, with a big black hole in front of him. Badger lives in there, he said to himself, and I'm supposed to go in and talk to him, but I won't. It was bad enough never to be a knight, but now my own tutor that I found on the only quest I shall ever have is to be taken from me also. and there will be no more natural history or exciting duels with Madam Mim. Very well. I will have one more night of joy before I am condemned, and as I am a wild beast now, I will be a wild beast, and there it is." So he trundled off fiercely over the twilight snow, for it was winter. If you are feeling desperate, a badger is a good thing to be. A relation of the bears, otters, and weasels, you are the nearest thing to a bear now left in England, and your skin is so thick that it makes no difference who bites you. As far as your own bite is concerned, there is something about the formation of your jaw which makes it almost impossible to be dislocated. And so, however much the thing you are biting twists about, there is no reason why you should ever let go. You are one of the few creatures which can munch up hedgehogs quite unconcernedly, just as you can munch up everything else from wasps' nests and roots to baby rabbits. It so happened that a sleeping hedgehog was the first thing which came in the wart's way. "Hedge pig," said the wart, peering at his victim with blurred, short-sighted eyes, "I'm going to munch you up." The hedgehog, which had hidden its own bright little eye buttons and long, sensitive nose inside its curl, and which had ornamented its spikes with a not very tasteful arrangement of dead leaves before going to bed for the winter in its grassy nest, woke up at this and squealed most lamentably. "The more you squeal," said the wart, "the more I shall gnash. It makes my blood boil within me." "Ah, Mr. Brock," cried the hedgehog, holding himself tight shut. "Good Mr. Brock, show mercy to a poor urchin, and don't he be tyrannical. Us bean't no common tiggy, mister, for to be munched and mumbled. Have mercy, kind sir, on a harmless flea-bitten crofter, which can't tell his left hand nor his right." "Hedge pig," said the wart remorselessly, "forbear to whine, neither thrice nor once." "Alas, my poor wife and child!" "I bet you haven't got any. Come out of that, thou tramp, and prepare to meet thy doom." "Master Brock," implored the unfortunate pig, "come now, don't ye be awkward, sweet Master Brock, my duck. Hearken to an urchin's prayer. Grant the dear boon of life to this most uncommon tiggy, lordly measter, and he shall sing to thee in numbers sweet, or teach ye how to suck cow's milk in the pearly dew." "Sing?" asked the wart, stopping, quite taken aback. "Aye, sing!" cried the hedgehog, and it began hurriedly to sing in a very placating manner, but rather muffled because it dared not uncurl. "Oh, Genevieve," it sang most mournfully into its tummy, "sweet Genevieve. Their days may come, their days may go, but still the light of memory weaves those gentle dreams of long ago." It also sang, without pausing for a moment between the songs, "Home, Sweet Home," and "The Old Rustic Bridge by the Mill." Then, because it had finished all its repertoire, it drew a hurried but quavering breath, and began again on Genevieve. After that it sang "Home, Sweet Home," and "The Old Rustic Bridge by the Mill." "Come on," said the wart. "You can stop that. I won't bite you." "Clementius, master," whispered the hedge pig humbly, "us shall bless the saints and malls of governors for thee and for thy most kindly chops, so long as fleas skip nor urchins climb up chimneys." Then, for fear that its brief relapse into prose might have hardened the tyrant's heart, it launched out breathlessly into Genevieve for the third time. "Stop singing," said the ward. For heaven's sake, uncurl. I won't do you any harm. Come, you silly little urchin, and tell me where you learned these beautiful songs. Uncurl is one word, answered the porpentine trimly. It did not feel in the least fretful at the moment, but curling up is still another. If he was to see my little naked nose, measter, at this conspicuous moment, I might feel a twitching in thy white toothsomes, and all's fear and love and war, that we do know. Let him sing to ye again, sweet Measter Brook, concerning thick there, rustic mill. I don't want to hear it any more. You sing it very well, but I don't want it again. Uncurl, you idiot, and tell me where you learned to sing. Us bent no common urchins, quavered the poor creature, staying curled up as tight as ever. Us wore a toque one little by one of them there gentry, like as it might be from the mother's breast. Ah, doan't he nip our tender victuals, lovely Master Brook, for he were a proper gentleman, he were, and brought us up full comely on cow's milk on that, all supped out from a lordly dish. Oh, there bean't many urchins what have drunken tap water out of porcelain, that there bean't. I don't know what you're talking about, said the wart. He were a gentleman, cried the hedgehog desperately. Like I tell ye, he's took, and when us were little, and fed us when us hadn't no more. He were a proper gentleman, what fed us in terpola, like what no urchins had before nor since. Fed out from gentlemen's porcelain, aye, and a dreary day it were, whenever us left, and for naught but wilfulness. That thou mayst be sure. What was the name of this gentleman? He were a gentleman, he were. They had no proper name, like not like you may remember, but he were a gentleman, that he were, and fed on out of porcelain. Was he called Merlin? Asked the wart curiously. Oh, that were his name. A proper fine name it were, but us never could lay a tongue to it by nary means. Ah, me iron, he called it to himself, and fed it out of porcelain, like a proper fine gentleman. Oh, do uncurl, exclaimed the wart. I know the man who kept you, and I think I have seen you yourself when you were a baby in cotton wool. Come on, urchin. I'm sorry I frightened you. We are friends here, and I want to see your little grey, wet, twitching nose, just for old sake's sake. Twitching nose be one name, answered the hedgehog obstinately, and the twitching of that nose be another, master. Now you move along, kind Master Brook, and leave a poor crofter to take his winter drowse. Let you think of beetles or honey, sweet baron, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. Nonsense, exclaimed the wart. I won't do you any harm, because I knew you when you were little. All them badgers, said the poor thing to its tummy, they go a burrowing about with no harm in their hearts, Lord bless 'em. But don't they fair give you a nip without a noticing of it? And Lord bless ye, what is a retired mon to do? It's that there skin of theirs, that's which it be, which from earliest childhood they've been a nipping of among each other, and also of the Mars, without a feeling of anything among theirselves. So natural they nips elsewhere, like the Siam. No, now, my poor gentleman, Master Miarn, they was all hours a rushing arter his ankles, with their yick, 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 when they wanted to be fed like. those what he kept from littles, and Holy Church, how he would scream! Aye, 'tis a molocky thing to deal with they badgers, that as may be sure doesn't see nothing, added the hedgehog before the wart could protest. Blunder along like to one day ambling earth rugs on the outsides of their girt feet, get in their way for a moment, just out of fortune like, without nary wicked intention, and 'tis snip snap, just like that, out of self-defense for the hungry blind. And then where are you? Only place us can do for un, continued the urchin, is to hit on onter Noah's Achilles' heel. They name it in their scriptures. Hit one of they girt trollops onter Noah's, bam, bam, like that there, and the sharp life is fair outer him. Ere he can snuffle. 'Tis a fair knockout, that it is. But how can a poor urchin dump onter Noah's, concluded the lecturer mournfully, when he hadn't got nothing to dump with, nor way to hold on, and then they comes about ye and asks ye for to uncurl. You needn't uncurl, said the wart resignedly. I'm sorry I woke you up, chap, and I'm sorry I frightened you. I think you are a charming hedgehog, and meeting you has made me feel more cheerful again. You just go to sleep like you were when I met you, and I shall go off to look for my friend Badger, as I was told to do. Good night, urchin, and good luck in the snow. Good night, it may be, muttered the pig grumpily, and then again it mayn't. First it's uncurl, then it's curl. One thing one moment, and another thing ter next. Hey ho, 'tis a turvy world, but good night, ladies, is my motto. Come hail, come snow, and so us shall be continued in our next. With these words, the humble animal curled himself up still more snugly than before, gave several squeaky grunts, and was far away in a dream world so much deeper than our human dreams, as a whole winter's sleep is longer than the mercy of a single night. Well, thought the wart, he certainly gets over his troubles pretty quickly. Fancy going to sleep again as quick as that. I dare say he was never more than half awake all the time, and will think it was only a dream when he gets up properly in the spring. He watched the dirty little ball of leaves and grass and fleas for a moment, curled up tightly inside its hole, then grunted and moved off towards the badger's set, following his own oblong footmarks backwards in the snow. So, Merlin sent you to me, said the badger, to finish off your education. Well, I can only teach you two things: to dig and to love your home. These are the true end of philosophy. Would you shew me your home? Certainly, said the badger, though of course I don't use it all. It's a rambling old place, much too big for a single man. I suppose some parts of it may be 1,000 years old. There are about 4 families of us in it, here and there, take it by and large, from cellar to attics, and sometimes we don't meet for months. A crazy old place. I suppose it must seem to you modern people, but there, it's cozy. He went ambling off down the corridors, rolling from leg to leg with that queer badger paddle. His white mask with its black stripes looked ghostly in the gloom. It's along that passage, he said, if you want to wash your hands. Badgers are not like foxes. They have a special midden where they put out their used bones and rubbish, proper earth closets, and bedrooms whose bedding they turn out frequently to keep it clean. The wart was enchanted with all he saw. He admired the great hall most, for this was the central room of the whole fortification. It was difficult to know whether to think of it as a fortification or as a palace, and all the various suites and bolt holes radiated outwards from it. It was a bit cobwebby, owing to being a sort of common room, instead of being looked after by one particular family, but it was decidedly solemn. Badger called it the combination room. All round the panelled walls there were ancient paintings of departed badgers, famous in their day for scholarship or godliness, lit up from above by shaded glowworms. There were stately chairs with the badger arms stamped in gold upon their Spanish leather seats. The leather was coming off, and a portrait of the founder over the fireplace. The chairs were arranged in a semicircle round the fire, and there were mahogany fans with which everybody could shield their faces from the flames, and a kind of tilting board by means of which the decanters could be slid back from the bottom of the semicircle to the top. Some black gowns hung in the passage outside, and all was extremely ancient.
I'm a bachelor at the moment,
Said the Badger apologetically, when they got back to his own snug room with the flowered wallpaper.
so I'm afraid there is only one chair. You will have to sit on the bed. Make yourself at home, my dear, while I brew some punch, and tell me how things are going on in the wide world.
Oh, they go on much the same. Merlin is very well, and Kay is to be made a knight next week,
An interesting ceremony.
commented the Badger, stirring the spirits with a big spoon. What enormous arms you have got, remarked the wart, watching him. So have I, for that matter, and he looked down at his own bandy-legged muscles. He was really just a tight chest holding together a pair of forearms, mighty as thighs.
It's to dig with,
Said the Badger complacently.
Mole and I suppose you would have to dig pretty quick to match with us.
I met a hedgehog outside, said the wart.
Did you now? They say nowadays that hedgehogs can carry swine fever and foot and mouth disease.
I thought he was rather nice,
They do have a sort of pathetic appeal,
said the Badger sadly.
but I'm afraid I generally just munch them up. There is something irresistible about pork crackling. The Egyptians,
He added, and by this he meant the gypsies.
are fond of them for eating too.
Mine wouldn't uncurl,
You shouldn't have you should have pushed him into some water,
said the Badger.
and then he'd have shown you his poor legs quick enough. Come, the punch is ready. Sit you down by the fire and take your ease.
It's nice to sit here with the snow and wind outside.
It is nice. Let us drink good luck to Kay in his knighthood.
Good luck to Kay, then,
Good luck. Well,
said the Badger, setting down his glass again with a sigh.
now, what could have possessed Merlin to send you to me?
He was talking about learning, said the wart.
Ah, well, if it's learning you are after, you have come to the right shop. But don't you find learning rather dull?
Sometimes I do, said the wart, and sometimes I don't. On the whole, I can bear a good deal of learning if it's about natural history.
I am writing a treatise just now,
Said the Badger, coughing differently to shew that he was absolutely set upon explaining it.
which is to point out why man has become the master of all the animals. Perhaps you would like to hear that. It's for my delit, you know.
Added the Badger hastily, before Wart could protest. He got so few chances of reading his treatises to anybody that he could not bear to let this priceless opportunity slip by. Thank you very much, said the wart.
It will be good for you,
Explained the badger in a humble tone.
It's just the thing to top off your education. Study birds and fish and animals, then finish off with man. How fortunate you came. Now, where the devil did I put that manuscript?
The old gentleman hurriedly scratched about with his great claws until he had turned up a dirty old bundle of papers, one corner of which had been used for lighting something. Then he sat down in his leather armchair, which had a deep depression in the middle of it, put on his velvet smoking cap with the tassel, and produced a pair of tarantula spectacles, which he balanced on the end of his nose.
Ahem,
Said the badger. He immediately became completely paralyzed with shyness and sat blushing at his papers, unable to begin. Go on, said the wart.
it's not very good,
Explained the badger coyly.
It's just a rough draft. I shall alter a lot before I send it in.
I'm sure it will be most interesting, said the wart.
Oh, no, it isn't a bit interesting. It's just an odd thing I threw off in an odd half hour just to pass the odd time. But still, this is how it begins.
Said the badger. Then he put on an impossible high falsetto voice and began to read as fast as possible. People often ask as an idle question whether the process of evolution began with the chicken or the egg. Was there an egg out of which the first chicken came, or did a chicken lay the first egg? I am in the position to state that the first thing created was the egg. When God had manufactured all the eggs out of which the fishes and the serpents and the birds and the mammals and even the duck-billed platypus would eventually emerge, he called the embryos before him and saw that they were good.
Perhaps I ought to explain,
Added the badger, lowering his papers nervously and looking at the wart over the top of them,
that all embryos look very much the same. They are what you are before you're born, and whether you're going to be a tadpole or a peacock or a camel leopard or a man, when you are an embryo, you just look like a peculiarly repulsive and helpless human being. I continue as follows.
The embryos stood up in front of God with their feeble hands clasped politely over their tummies and their heavy heads hanging down respectfully, and God addressed them. He said, Now, you embryos, here you are, all looking exactly the same, and we are going to give you the choice of what you are going to be. When you grow up, you will get bigger anyway, but we are pleased to grant you another gift as well. You may alter any parts of yourselves into anything which you think would be useful to you in after life. For instance, at the moment you can't dig, anybody who would like to turn his hands into a pair of spades or garden forks is allowed to do so. Or to put it another way, at present you can only use your mouth for eating with. Anybody who would like to use his mouth as an offensive weapon can change it by asking, or be a cork and drill or a saber-toothed tiger. Now then, step up and choose your tools, but remember that what you choose you will grow into and you will have to stick to. All the embryos thought the matter over politely, and then one by one they stepped up before the eternal throne. They were allowed 2 or 3 specializations, so that some chose to use their arms as flying machines and their mouths as weapons, or crackers, or drillers, or spoons, while others selected to use their bodies as boats and their hands as oars. We badgers thought very hard and decided to ask 3 boons. We wanted to change our skins for shields, our mouths for weapons, and our arms for garden forks. These boons were granted to us. Everybody specialized in one way or another, and some of us in very queer ones. For instance, One of the lizards decided to swap his whole body for blotting paper, and one of the toads who lived in the antipodes decided simply to be a water bottle. The asking and granting took up 2 long days. They were the fifth and sixth, so far as I remember. And at the very end of the sixth day, just before it was time to knock off for Sunday, they had got through all the little embryos except one. This embryo was man. Well, our little man, said God, you have waited till the last and slept on your decision, and we're sure you have been thinking hard all the time. What can we do for you? Please, God, said the embryo, I think you made me in the shape which I now have for reasons best known to yourselves, and that it would be rude to change. If I am to have my choice, I will stay just as I am. I will not alter any of the parts which you gave to me for other and doubtless inferior tools, and I will stay a defenseless embryo all my life, doing my best to make unto myself a few feeble implements out of the wood, iron, and other materials which you have seen fit to put before me. If I want a boat, I will endeavor to construct it out of trees, and if I want to fly, I will put together a chariot to do it for me. Probably I've been very silly in refusing to take advantage of your kind offer, but I have done my best to think it over carefully, and now hope that the feeble decision of this small innocent will find favor with yourselves. Well done, exclaimed the Creator in delighted tones. Here, all you embryos, come here with your beaks and whatnots to look upon our first man. He is the only one who has guessed our riddle out of all of you, and we have great pleasure in conferring upon him the order of dominion over the fowls of the air and the beasts of the earth and the fishes of the sea. Now let the rest of you get along and love and multiply, for it is time to knock off for the weekend. As for you, man, you will be a naked tool all your life. Though a user of tools, you will look like an embryo till they bury you. But all others will be embryos before your might, eternally undeveloped. You will always remain potential in our image, able to see some of our sorrows and to feel some of our joys. We are partly sorry for you, man, and partly happy, but always proud. Run along then, man, and do your best. And listen, man, before you go. Well, asked Adam, turning back from his dismissal. We were only going to say, said God shyly, twisting their hands together. Well, we're just going to say, God bless you.